This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. K-State Extension beef cattle specialist Justin Waggoner starts off the show as he chats about safety reminders for silage harvest from chopping, hauling, and packing. Dale Blasi, K-State Extension beef cattle specialist, keeps the show rolling as he highlights the work that the Beef Stocker Unit does to benefit the beef industry and students at K-State. Ending the show is K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk as he chats about 4 key considerations when harvesting silage: the dry matter content, layering, the number of tractors needed, and getting the corn silage covered as quickly as possible. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Tuesday show discussing silage harvest safety with K-State Extension beef cattle specialist Justin Waggoner. Justin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Shelby.
Justin, why for this time of year, especially in your part of the state, are you thinking about silage harvest safety?
Well, I think, as we get into the western half of the state, we certainly have large feed yards, we have large dairies. As we get into corn silage harvest, it's one of the hallmarks of fall in western Kansas, if you will, maybe in Kansas as a whole. But, as I think about activities on a feedlot or a dairy, there are very few things that are as fast-paced as silage harvest. And so if you think about, we have custom choppers that are coming in, we have trucking companies that are bringing that, green chop silage into the operation. We've got pack tractors that are packing that. We've also got companies that are coming in to cover our silage piles in some instances as well. There's just a lot of activity, especially associated with silage harvest. And so in my mind, it's a great time to talk about safety, have those discussions with team members. In addition to that, it's also an operation that often brings people that aren't familiar with the feed yard or dairy on the feed yard or dairy. And so, having your employees be aware of those people and those activities, and, that there may be some people in some locations that there aren't normally people in. I think that's an important topic, is to have those safety conversations. And so early on in my career, I got to spend some time with Dr. Keith Bolson. And, if anybody's familiar with Dr. Bolson, spent a large portion of his career at K-State really talking about silage safety. And from a variety of different aspects. And one of the things he always stressed was that every silage accident could have been prevented. There was always, some key things where here was where this accident didn't have to happen. And so that really always kind of resonated with me. And I think it's just a great time, especially in the fall, as we get into these on the cusp of silage harvest, maybe in some parts of the state that may have already started. Just really depends on how quickly things are drying down and progressing. But, there's some key elements that often come into these silage accidents that we hear about.
And so with that routine of everything, what are some key elements that you'd really like growers or people driving the trucks to keep in mind?
Yeah, so the first big one is just don't become complacent. And I think that's as good for both those involved in the silage operations, as well as those, regular employees, feed truck drivers, people that are involved with maintenance. Oftentimes, as we get into, highly repetitive activities or tasks that we often have in agriculture, i.e. feed truck drivers, right? We feed this same row of cattle every day. We go through that process. One of the number one factors that as we hear about on-farm accidents is simply, that lack of situational awareness. Oh, I've done this 100 times before, and this wasn't the case. This wasn't there. And so just, encourage your employees not to become complacent, to stay aware of their surroundings and some of those things, especially as we get into this time of year where we're going to be bringing some people that are not as familiar with our operations on the premise.
And what about that safety aspect in terms of when we're transporting from the field to the operation?
Yeah, we talk about the pace that we can harvest silage at. And so, in my mind, I can picture those nice, evenly spaced silage trucks, coming down that dirt road, at, sometimes a fairly high rate of speed. Everything is really at the speed of commerce. And so, we've got increased travel down these gravel roads. It creates dust. Oftentimes we're in the fall, so crops are tall. The visibility at intersections, that's fairly low. We've also got residences and houses and schools starting back up. And so as you think about some of those things, that just puts more people out on these country roads at times. And so I think it's always a good idea to remind our drivers, especially in those trucks associated with silage harvest, just be aware when working near residences, right? And then to be courteous to others on the road and to always be aware at those intersections. Slow down, if you can't see what's coming, take an extra minute, just be extra cautious as we get into those, especially situations where we've got a lot of dust, low visibility, all those factors that kind of start to play into those on the road accidents associated with silage harvest.
And when it comes to getting that silage back to the operation, what are a few safety considerations when it comes to getting it put away per se?
Yeah, so one of the number one rules that I always try to tell people to practice is that we should never have people that approach that drive over pile or that bunker while we're filling that. So they shouldn't be on foot. We want to prevent as much of that as possible. However, we know sometimes we do have to enter into those areas. And if we do, we need to get on the radio, use those communication devices, inform the drivers and operators that, hey, we've got someone that's going to be coming into the area. It's also a good idea to wear that high visibility clothing, whether that's a vest or that's, the shirts that are out there today. And really, ideally, we want to make contact. If we've got a tractor operator on a pile, we've got to approach that area. We really shouldn't go into that area until we've made eye contact with that person that's operating it. Yes, we can get on the radio, but it's always better if I've got my high vis on, I can see that person, we've made eye contact, they know I'm going to approach that area. Another aspect as we think about filling, just bunkers and how to keep it safe, there are fewer silage bunkers out there today. I think drive-over piles has become more common, but we really don't want to fill that silage over and above that bunker wall. Oftentimes it's tempting to do that, but that's really increases our risk of rolling over a pack tractor. Oftentimes the silage that we put in those elevated bunker walls, it's really fairly unstable, and so it doesn't pack very well. So there's, we just don't create very good feed. It also creates a risk because it's fairly unstable as well. The other thing we have to keep in mind is we are putting this equipment, we're making a pile, so we've got a slope. How do we maintain an ideal grade of, kind of 1 to 3 as we're going up the sides of those piles? I mean, tractors roll over. So we just need to be cognizant of that, as we're harvesting silage and putting it in the bunker. And a big one that I think often happens, equipment breaks down. And where does it oftentimes break down? At the center of the activity. And so if we've got a piece of equipment, be it a truck, be it a pack tractor that has broken down or needs to be repaired, and it's oftentimes going to be at or near the edge of the pile where we've got a lot of activity, it's just a really good idea to try to remove that equipment as soon as possible from that area where we've got that increase in activity. We also oftentimes, if we're going to repair a tire or work on a piece of equipment, we're going to have people on foot. And so you can see very quickly where just ideally, in a best case scenario, we'd like to just go ahead and move that equipment somewhere else that we don't have all that activity associated just around or near that drive over pile where we've got all that activity that's occurring.
We've focused towards the people working on the operation and getting that silage chopped, but what about the residents that are around those areas? Any safety reminders for them?
Yeah, I think it's just an increased awareness, right? I mean, we talk about, oftentimes people live in rural areas. We're all very familiar with that, but if we may have guests, we have many people that are not familiar with silage harvest that say, hey, typically these trucks are going to come, 1, 2, 3, stretched out a mile or so down the road. If you see one silage truck, there's probably another one right behind it. So just be cautious and be aware of that. I think it's just as a general rule as we get into this time of year. Same thing is true for weed harvest or any other, agricultural process that oftentimes where it just puts an increased amount of activity out there on our country roads.
As we've chatted about safety reminders of getting the silage put away, what about taking that silage back out? A lot of those safety reminders still exist of communicating well and wearing high-vis vests.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a host of rules that we oftentimes associate with silage. One, we know silage can cave off of those piles, so we never want to have anyone approach the actual face of that pile. We want to keep a safe distance and operate with that. We also may want to consider placing some cones or some visual barriers around that silage pile that says, hey, this is a silage area. There's increased risk here. Please don't enter this area. I also want to follow the buddy rule. That's a simple one. Many larger operations, it's not uncommon to have silage stored at another location and then being brought to a dairy or a feedlot today. And so just knowing where all those people are at, if they've gone to repair a piece of equipment that's at another location, informing a supervisor or someone else that's on that team what to do. So yeah, certainly, there are some risks associated with silage, but hopefully to kind of channel those words from Keith Bolson, our number one goal is to keep everybody safe and send them home to their family that evening.
Justin, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Shelby.
That was Kansas State University Extension beef cattle specialist Justin Waggoner with reminders for people when it comes to silage harvest. If you missed part of our conversation or would like to hear previous shows of Agriculture Today, you can listen to them by going to agtoday.net or by heading on over to your favorite podcast streaming platform and searching for Agriculture Today. If you're wanting to find out more information from K-State Extension's beef team, you can do that by going on over to their website, ksubeef.org. Once again, that is ksubeef.org. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Dale Blasi as we learn a little bit about K-State's Beef Stocker Unit. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about the K-State Beef Stocker Unit with K-State Extension Beef Specialist Dale Blasi. Dale, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here, Shelby.
Dale, the Beef Stocker Unit has been around for many, many years at K-State, but for those who maybe don't know about it, what is the K-State Beef Stocker Unit?
Well, the K-State Beef Stocker Unit is one of several animal units that are housed in the Department of Animal Sciences and Industry. The specific purpose of the Stocker Unit is to address the issues and educational pursuits that are specific to the stocker sector in our beef industry. We work at times closely with the cow-calf unit, the cow-calf industry, and then we also have concerns with what happens post-flow with these calves once they leave and arrive at a feed yard, at the feed yard sector.
And as we are a university, what student tie-in does this unit have? How do they utilize the knowledge and work of students?
Well, first and foremost, and one thing that's very, very valuable to our department is the accessibility and the proximity of our animal units to the campus. So we're 5 miles out from Weber and Call Hall. So students are able to access the unit and still not really ruin a better part of their day. They're either able to attend class, a specific class period at the unit, or if they are employed or conducting undergraduate research, they're able to achieve their objectives for the day and attend class at the same time.
And as we are at the beginning of school for many schools, universities, grade school, middle school, how does the flow or routine of the stocker unit always stay the same as students come and go?
Right. And for the better part of 20 years, the unit has actually been in place, the stocker unit. We'll have students approach and ask for opportunities to conduct work, to do work. And, first and foremost, Shelby, and we make this an emphasis at the unit, is that students they show up to Manhattan to attend as students, to be students first and foremost. So the number of hours can vary. Certainly as a freshman, we like to see that not more than 10 or 15 hours weekly are spent labor. I mean, we want them to focus on their coursework and to get a good start in their collegiate career. As students get older, the juniors, seniors have a better handle on how to manage their time. And as a consequence, we may have students that work upwards of a max of maybe 30 hours. So it doesn't happen very often, but we do have those students that are able to maybe work on the weekends and achieve some of those higher hours to augment their fiscal needs. So it varies by student. We may have a student start and work for a semester, have a change, maybe an internship comes up and they leave. Maybe their course schedule just simply disallows them from having a dependable amount of time to reliably show up to work. That's what's really important is we teach a lot of life skills. That's one thing we see is helping a lot of students, particularly those who have really not had the luxury of growing up on an ag background, to understand the importance of showing up early, being ready to achieve the objectives, whatever it is. I mean, this morning we were gathering calves at 7 a.m. to ship 100 head of Floridian calves, cattle from Florida, collaborative project with the University of Florida. We had 3 undergrads that were working this summer that were there to help assist in the collection of these calves. So it varies: fence building, pen repair, water gap repair from the rains that we've had this summer. It changes with the year, with the time of the year that we're dealing with.
Dale, do you do a lot of collaborative projects with other universities?
When it's advantageous to both institutions, yes. In this case, we're looking at a system of a cow-calf system where they early wean out of first calf heifers the calves. Yes, I'm being too specific for this interview, but we do collaborate. We meet several institutions once a year to talk about projects that each are doing. And again, when it's collaborative and when it helps to answer an industry question, you bet. We need to be doing those sorts of things, Shelby.
And how does the unit continue to evolve with the industry?
Well, the industry right now, we're really not different than any commercial setting in terms of sourcing cattle that fit profitably for feedlots, finding cattle that might work, that are purchased, at a market, at an advantage. I want to say at where the margin for profitability exists, as we work with a rather large feedlot customer who provides us calves. If the calves don't work for them at the end of the day, then quite simply, they're not going to purchase or place calves on grass. So we do feel the effects. Ingredient prices. I mean, when corn was $8 a bushel several years ago, we dealt with the same thing. We deal with co-product accessibility, all those things. We are just a small picture in the grand scheme of things. I think that's really what helps us be more cognizant of what our clientele are dealing with.
Do you have new technology you're excited to hopefully bring into the unit?
Well, yeah, we have several pieces of technology that we use. In fact, we're going to kick off a study here in 2 weeks. We're looking at ear tags, for example, with 701X. We're feeding a set of 100 head of steers out for a PhD project. For the October project, we're actually going to be working with a company that measures behavior with incoming calves. It's a company called Data Mars. We'll be looking at that. That'll be used to gather the data that we need to look at the differences in treatment that we impose on the calves. We're also putting some older technology in, some old kaolin gates that have been repurposed for individual feeding. So yes, I mean, we keep a close eye on developments in the industry, and we seek out partnerships with these technology companies to defray the obvious expenses that are involved, and it allows us to kick the tires, if you will, on these different technologies. And as a result, we're able to better remark to our clientele our producers that we work with. We'll share information such as this at our upcoming Stalker Field Day on September 24th. We conduct research, but we're also outreach, and we're close to campus, and we have to show the value of the research that we collect, whether it's the write-ups that we contribute to our annual Cattlemen's Day reports, or to proceedings, or to the presentations that we're capable of giving throughout the state at various county meetings or regional meetings.
With the many aspects of that outreach, research, teaching, cattle, what's your favorite part, Dale?
All of it is, because it's never quite the same. I mean, I'm quite proud of the fact that the Stalker unit hosts several groups at our facility throughout the year. And, one exciting thing we do every year is with Discovery Days. And we teach chuck wagon cooking using cast iron pots. And so we entertain for one day about 20 to 30 4-H'ers that attend the Discovery Days. And we have groups from around the world. We're going to be hosting some Argentinians here in October. And of course, we have producers. When Farm Bureau has their annual convention in Manhattan, we'll bring them out. They'll ask, and we'll contribute. They'll come out, and we'll show and tell and kick the tires, if you will. We have numerous producer groups from Kentucky, Tennessee. We've had Scottish, we've had Turkish producers around the world. And it's something that we're able to show people what our university does on behalf of our industry here in the state.
Dale, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
That was Kansas State University Extension beef cattle specialist Dale Blasi discussing K-State's beef stocker unit. If you'd like to learn more about this unit, you can do so by following the link in today's show notes on agtoday.net, or you can simply search for K-State beef stocker unit on the internet. If you are willing to come visit the facilities, there is an upcoming learning opportunity taking place September 24th. We will hear more about Beef Stalker Field Day here on Agriculture Today in the upcoming weeks, but you can go ahead and get it put on your calendar for September 24th at 9:30 a.m. I will put a link to it in today's show notes on agtoday.net, or you can also find it by going to ksubeef.org. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. We end today's program with this week's milk lines. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk is getting questions about corn silage harvest, and he says there are 4 key factors to consider.
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy producers and others that might be harvesting corn silage. This time of year I get a lot of questions about what are the real key factors that we need to pay attention to when we're harvesting corn silage so that we might have a crop that is good nutritionally for our animals, whether they be dairy animals or beef animals. So as I think about that, and I think about the fact that most of our silage is put into either piles or bunkers, there's really 4 main things I would encourage you to consider. The first one would be the whole plant moisture of the crop that you're ensiling. For corn silage, we really would not like to see that greater than 40% dry matter. And the reason for that is the packability of the crop. As we get above 40% dry matter, it's really like trying to pack a bunch of sponges together. You drive over it, and it just simply springs back, filling back with air, leading to a lot of spoilage and mold in your corn silage. Also a lot of excess heating as well. So making sure that the dry matter of that material is somewhere between 36 and 38% will ensure that you have a material that will actually pack well. Second issue that we run into is how deep a layers are we packing. If we have too deep of a layer that we're trying to pack, we simply won't pack it. It'll remain loose and we'll end up with increased spoilage and poor fermentation in that layer. So layers, as we spread that across the face of the silo, should be no more than 6 inches deep, and 4 inches would even be better. If you don't have some sort of gauge on your blade so the drivers understand how deep of layer they're laying down, you need to have those. You also need to make sure you have the right number of tractors. How do we determine that? Number one, we look at the total tons that we're harvesting per hour, and we take that times 800 pounds. So if you're harvesting 200 ton an hour times 800 pounds, that would be about 160,000 pounds. That's a lot of tractor weight, and many people are surprised at that number. But if you have that much total tractor weight, which means you'll probably have to have 3 or 4 tractors packing that pile, you will get a decent pack as long as those tractors are always running while you're bringing silage to the bunker. One of the things that often happens is one tractor drops off for one reason or another, and now we don't have enough packing weight going onto that pile, even though our delivery rate to the bunker has not changed. So ensuring that you have enough tractor weight based on the tons that you're harvesting per hour is very, very important. Now, if we have wetter silage, let's say we're closer to 30% dry matter, can we get by with less tractor weight? Well, possibly. Some people use 600 pounds per ton as a rule of thumb to determine how many tractors and what weight we actually need. However, I want to caution you that if you always use the 800 number and you keep those tractors running all the time while we're delivering silage to the bunker, you should have an adequate pack on that material. Again, as long as you're obeying the rules for total plant moisture, as well as the layer thickness that you are packing. Final thing is, if we've gone to all this work to make sure we get it packed correctly, we need to make sure we get it covered as soon as possible. That seal on the top is very, very important in protecting what's underneath. So using an oxygen barrier followed by a layer of plastic is the best method to ensure that you'll have a good seal. And also make sure that you place on top of that plastic and barrier either tires or other materials that are going to hold that plastic tight to the silage mass. Making sure that you maintain that cover is going to be very, very important during the storage phase as well, as any holes that are ripped into that will immediately provide access for oxygen to the silage pile, causing spoilage. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers and others to follow these 4 simple rules when building silage piles or filling bunker silos.
Thanks, Mike. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.